It could split a lot of hairs, hip-hop and rap, especially because rap is a vocal style.
Everyone knows what rock and roll is. It's a very large umbrella. It covers a whole bunch of stuff.
Could you say that the Gaga gimmick was an afterthought? You know, like she had the songs, but they said, no, you need more.
She's definitely one that has the talent.
Yeah.
Can write, can do singing, songwriting.
We started coming out to the West Coast in the early 80s. We saw Kennedy's Black Flag, Flipper, all this, really nihilistic punk rock thing. Man, there's a lot of rules in this thing. You gotta wear this chain that way, and you gotta hate this particular kind of politics. It was just like all these rules, and we're like, what are these rules about? We want to make music. Music.
I was ready to be born ready.
Oh, yes. Sounds a bit like rock and roll, doesn't it?
10 seconds, guys.
From Mind Rocket Studio, between Ohio and Pennsylvania, covering the culture of popular music of yesterday and today. Speaking of music, you're listening to it. With your hosts, from the Raw Alternative, Rick Polo, from SYLM, Joe Sinkovich, and Lucas Gola. Here's your anchor, Jimmy Martin.
Welcome to Speaking of Music. On the show today, we're going to talk about some of the top albums of the 1990s. We surveyed some of our listeners, and they gave us their top picks of their favorite albums of the 90s. And we're going to go through some of those picks, and using some of the more popular criteria, we're going to maybe pick our own favorites and ask you to also, as always, submit your favorites as well, and maybe we can include those on a later show. So let me get us started here and just sort of go over some of the small sample of people that gave us their opinion on what their top albums were of the 90s. Going over the list, I have of about 20, maybe as many as 30 different albums. Some of the ones that ranked highest were Pearl Jam 10, Nirvana, Nevermind, Alice in Chains, Dirt, and then right behind Dirt was OK Computer by Radiohead. And once we got to Radiohead, the only one that sort of hangs with that group would be Blood Sugar Sex Magic by the Chili Peppers. The rest, there's a few sporadic votes here and there for albums, and I'll read those really quick just to let you know what the rest of the field looks like. Jane's Addiction, Vulgar Display of Power by Pantera, Purple, Stone Temple Pilots, Core, STP, Pablo Honey by Radiohead, Jar of Flies, another Alice in Chains, great EP, Green Mind by Dinosaur Jr., the Rage Against the Machine, self-titled, Weezer, the Blue Album, Throwing Copper, which I'm glad somebody included, Californication, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Tool, Undertow, Sponge, Rotting Pinata, and another Pantera, Far Beyond Driven. I have another list of some of the more obscure choices, but after reciting that long list of albums, Lucas, what are some of your thoughts?
Well, a lot of that stuff is, stuff that I expected to be on it. Pearl Jam 10's a great record. Like, whether you even like that band or not, you can't deny that. Like, that's a great record full of great songs. Yep. I mean, it's super good from beginning to end, really.
Yep.
There's a lot of, the grunge stuff on there, which is definitely of the 90s. Whether you like it or not, it's on there. The first two Tool albums were super good. Like, I really liked those. I like that bass player that played on the first two records. And I think that Blood Sugar Sex Magic, while it was a total departure for the most part from what those guys had done previously, which I liked a lot, but they kind of continued in that vein, and I wish that they had just kind of gone back to rapping about blowjobs.
What are some of your thoughts, Rick?
Well, first of all, what the hell is wrong with you people? There's no Downward Spiral? Come on.
Nine Inch Nails?
Yes, absolutely. But that joke aside, I had to throw in my Nine Inch Nails plug.
Yeah,
come up about every episode.
Yeah, you're somewhat of a fan, I hear.
Casual fan.
Yeah.
But a lot of it, like Lucas said, is to be expected. A lot of the stuff from the grunge movement, but I'm wondering if, I guess you can say, the type of people, the demographic of people that responded to this, because I was shocked to see no Oasis or any of that, that kind of Britpop stuff
Yeah,
that
yeah,
hit
there's a
from
lot
the
of
mid
stuff that-
90s. The only really standout from the any grunge albums is Chili Peppers. Blood Sugar Sex Magic was a great record. But in a weird way, it was kind of in tune with grunge, I think. I know Nirvana and Pearl Jam opened for them on that tour. And, Radiohead, I was kind of glad to see. I think they were a big game changer in the 90s from a lot of what was happening, a lot of the sound of the early 90s into a lot of the sound that would eventually kind of cross into the new millennium. And I think OK Computer is the album that definitely splits those two time periods, if there is an album to do such.
I agree.
I can't stand those dudes.
They're not
Wow.
for everyone.
They don't do anything for me. I mean, granted, like, I'm a stoner rock guy, and I listen to stuff that, kind of all sounds like Black Sabbath, and they don't sound anything like Black Sabbath. So, they're not for me. I don't get it. I've tried.
Wow.
I've given them a shot, but they're just, they're
Lucas,
not for me.
while the gloves will be wrapped in cotton candy,
Yeah.
you and I are going to
yeah.
put the gloves on.
I
over this.
understand. I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of people who are going to...
Well, I will say that Pablo Honey, in my own opinion, other than Creep, which is not even close to being a fair representation
I agree with you
of
there.
that band, Pablo Honey in general, I don't think is a good album. I don't think it is very good at all. However, their follow-up to that, The Bends, I think
I
was
love the Bends.
was really them, coming forth as songwriters. And a lot of that still had, that alternative kind of, fuzzy guitar stuff. And truly, you haven't seen a band really since the Beatles, I don't think, that evolved that quickly, that differently, sonically.
You definitely could tell on the Bends that they were Beatles influenced. Yeah, just the density of the songs and some of the tonality choices. There were no danceable songs on the Bends. There's not even a song that I think you clap your hands to and express glee.
Right.
It was just basically downer, introspective, concept music, all minor tonality. Not to get too, music-y on everyone, but I'm always drawn to those kinds of records. But I wanted to backstep a little bit. And when we talked about Dirt, and you guys both mentioned Blood Sugar Sex Magic, those are two albums that are so substantial and chunky and long that I have to almost take a nap after listening to them. Mm-hmm. I mean, you get your money's worth when you listen to those two records.
Well, another thing about those two records, too, Dirt and Blood Sugar Sex Magic, phenomenal records start to end, but not a whole lot of diversity in songwriting. The Chili Peppers maybe a little more so, but Dirt, to me, it's a great record. I'd put it up there as one of the ones I love. Lots of great riffs for, guitar player, music fans, but the whole album's pretty much about doing heroin. And, another song about heroin. Oh, you got Junkhead, you got Dirt, you got Godsmack, you got Hate to Feel, you got Down in a Hole. Whereas another album from the same time period, I'm sorry, but The Downward Spiral is about, addiction and being on a downward spiral. But I do feel like there's a lot of different moods and ideas that flow through that album. And, whether it be railing against organized religion, railing about, in a nihilistic way, railing about addiction, or, some weird sadomasochistic things he's got going on there. Dirt and Blood Sugar Sex Magic, I would agree, are very long and very similar.
And they're 90s as hell.
Yeah.
Alice in Chains is another one. Like, I can't handle those dudes. I saw them at a Lollapalooza in 93, and it was towards the end of the day. They were kind of headlining, and oh my God, was that painful to sit through. That
That's
dude
it.
whining.
Rick, take off the cotton candy. We're getting serious.
That's
oh
true.
my God, that dude and his vocals, oh my God, it's very tiresome to listen to that man whine. It really is. And all those songs are just the whiniest. And then there were a whole bunch of bands that sounded like that took on that whole whining vocal thing. And oh man.
Yeah, he doesn't have a whole lot of
man.
colors to his vocal profile.
No, he's whining.
Yeah.
And that's that. So if you don't like whining, you don't want to hear that stuff.
I do like it, but and it's funny. He really inspired a whole new class of singers. Like Scott Stipe was a Lane Staley disciple.
Yeah.
Whether he'll admit to it or not.
And dudes from Godsmack.
STP, even Wyland, I think.
Yeah, he was more Eddie Vedder-y, I think, to me.
Kind of 70s arena rock flair to the grunge thing, though. I think that's what set STP apart a little bit. They were bigger. They were thinking outside of grunge, even though they had those muddy guitars and especially Purple. You kind of start to see their psychedelic influences,
definitely
coming through.
I like both those records. I mean, Purple was very rich.
I love STP's earlier stuff.
Yeah, I think they got a bad rap. I heard on that Jonah Ray podcast where they were dissing Stone Temple Pilots, and I was offended because I still listen to those records.
Them, kind of like the Pumpkins, were the alternative bands, quote unquote, that were kind of primed and ready for radio. Whether or not that was their plan or their fault, I don't know. I do feel like both those artists were genuine in their own right. But they just kind of happened post Nirvana, post Pearl Jam, where it was okay for those kind of songs to be played on mainstream rock radio.
Thanks for calling the Speaking of Music show hotline. Leave your comments, your answers to our show questions after the beat. Thanks again.
Hello, this is Paco from Pilot the Mind, bringing to you my favorite album of the 90s. Without thinking too hard about it, the first album that came to mind was the Smashing Pumpkins' Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. The album is close to my heart. I spent a lot of time listening to it, digesting it, dissecting it, learning how to play a vast majority of the album, really feeling the lyrics, the musical interludes, everything about that album from start to finish, on both cassette tapes, because that's, what I had back then. I just loved it. Loved it. Yeah, there you go. Rock on.
Hi guys, my name's Lee Boyle. Saw your question on the Speaking of Music show Facebook. Favorite 90s album and why? Presidents of the United States of America 2. That's my favorite 90s album because the Presidents are great. While a lot of people didn't appreciate their second effort as a band, I thought they rose above what they did on their self-titled debut in that they expanded outside of animals and started singing about shoes. You can tell they're really deep for that. And also, I think they polished themselves just a little bit, which usually I am not a fan of, but for them it worked. It was a little bit of a clearer, slicker album. And I like hearing what's going on with those three guys. Also, they added the piano stylings of Tennille, uncredited. Tennille from the Captain and Tennille is believed to have played the little piano riffs on songs such as Volcano. Also, my last reason for loving the Presidents of the United States album entitled 2, Mach 5, the lead single from the album, is the most rockinest song of all time. Alright guys, keep up the good work.
Hello, this is Lee Boyle of the podcast Nursery of the band Third Class and the comedy troupe Bullskit Productions. Maybe you haven't heard of us? Huh? Anyways, you're listening to Speaking of Music. The Speaking of Music show is an audio editorial program that dives deep behind the curtain of music culture of yesterday and today. Enjoy.
One thing that we didn't touch on, and that's my fault, is what everybody who participated in this little small sample survey mentioned is that they all sort of agreed on the criteria of coming up with their favorite albums. And that criteria was if I can listen to it without wanting to skip a song. An album you can listen to all the way through.
That's pretty solid right there.
Importantly to note, nothing about sales or Billboard charting, which surprised me. So it's all about personal feeling and are there any duds? So yeah, I think that's important to note. That it's good too that like as we go through all these albums and talk amongst ourselves, we can keep going back to that criteria and really look at these albums one on one. Like for me, Dirt fits that criteria. There's no duds on there in my opinion. Blood Sugar Sex Magic, no duds. I wanted to read this short list of the bands that I've never even heard of that were listed as some of these folks' best albums of the 1990s. Pure Phase by Spiritualized.
Oh, that's a good band.
Great record.
Ladies and Gentlemen, We're Floating in Space. Again, the band Spiritualized. Motherhead's Family Reunion by Richie Kotzen.
Kotzen, I
Kotzen?
believe. Yeah.
Mountain Goats, self-titled. Life of Agony, River Runs Red. Core, The Hustle Was On,
That's one of mine. I love that record. That's so good. It's fantastic. It holds up even now. I mean, granted, it's like super late 90s, but like, that's a great record. Fantastic record. Super good.
I want to check out, is it Drive-By
Truckers? Yeah.
Drive-By Truckers, okay.
Great stuff.
Okay, yeah, I gotta check them out.
Country, Southern Rocky.
Oh, is that the Jason Isabel's band?
Maybe, I don't know.
Okay, they did a Day Trotter session. Then the last one was submitted by, if I'm reading this right, Rick Polo.
You can say Pollo.
Refused Shape of Punk to Come.
Ah.
I found that obscure. Maybe I'm just not as cool as I always thought it was.
It is a little obscure. The Refused, they were a Swedish punk rock band. And Shape of Punk to Come, I believe that was their I could be wrong on this. I believe that was their debut for Epitaph Records in the late 90s. And they kind of took The Shape of Jazz to Come. They kind of did a play on that record. It was a very experimental punk rock album, very noisy. I think the subgenre that was spawned from that was called post-hardcore. I really love that record. I really think it's kind of really forward-thinking in a genre that kind of tends to hold very closely to its ideals. And after them, you had sort of bands like At the Drive-In, Glassjaw, and the unfortunate thing about after those bands is I think they did some really cool, interesting things. A few years later, Vans, insert trademark, Warped Tour, kind of switched over and started showcasing these screamo bands that kind of took the ideas of the Refused and At the Drive-In and really ran with them a different way, a way that I never really got or understood. And I know, that was my generation. I guess that, the media and the hot topics and everything kind of really clung to all, you had bands like that, Taking Back Sundays and The Used and different things like that, which I felt was a very watered down, bastardized version of what, the Refused and the ideas on Shape of Punk became.
See, I'm too old for that. Like, I just,
I think
91 was my cutoff for punk rock because I was 15 in 1990 and 16 in 1991, and by that point, I was done with it. So I quit paying attention to pretty much any punk rock that came out after 1987 or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you could almost argue too that around that time, a lot of punk rock wasn't really doing a whole lot.
No, it hasn't for.
It had, and with the explosion of alternative rock in the early 90s, some people went back to punk rock. It's not hard to see how Soundgarden was influenced by Black Flag.
Or Suicidal Tendencies. I thought they were kind of punk rock.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, their early stuff especially. They turned into some weird funk band towards... they're still around, aren't they?
Is that right?
I think they are.
Yeah, lots of lineup changes, but they're still there.
Yeah.
But yeah, punk rock, it had evolved a little bit in the 90s, and obviously when you had bands like Green Day and The Offspring.
Yeah, they didn't make the list, did they? Green Day? Is Dookie on there?
Dookie's a great album too.
That's not on there.
I'm surprised.
I'm surprised that's not on there.
And some of the stuff by Bad Religion too. Some of their work on Epitaph Records before they got to a major label. Recipe for Hate.
21st Century Digital Boy, is that on that one?
That I believe was on the follow-up.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, I guess there were just as many surprises as to what didn't make that list than the stuff that is on there.
Yeah, and again, you can't help repeat, or I can't help repeat that it's just a little whoever happened to be online those 2 days
and saw that and
they're
whatever
one of my
stuff
friends,
they listened
which
to. Yeah,
the algorithm is already being filtered down.
Totally.
I will say though that I did post this on our Facebook fan page, and I think we're up to like 120 some fans for only doing this for 2-3 months.
That's not bad. Go like that page, everybody. Come on.
Yeah.
What the hell's a hold up?
No, I don't want to backpedal, but if you want to equate sales with demand and popularity, it's important to note that in 91, when they reissued Bleach, Sub Pop Bleach sold the most out of any record that they ever produced.
In the Sub Pop catalog
Yeah,
ever?
the Sub Pop catalog, yeah.
Yeah,
Bleach,
that makes
#1.
sense. That makes sense.
That's a great album. Very,
It's pretty
very
good.
raw. It's angry and dirty. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely the one of those that I like. Actually, I liked In Utero quite a bit, and I'm not a huge Nirvana fan. But Bleach is pretty solid. It's good. It's good.
Pre-Dave Grohl.
Yeah. Who
Chad
played drums?
Channing?
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And if I'm not mistaken, he actually demoed a lot of the songs that became on Nevermind.
Yeah.
And Dave Grohl kind of followed him verbatim. He mentioned in Nirvana's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame acceptance speech that In Bloom, where they do the da-da-da-da-da, that was actually Chad Channing's demo that Dave Grohl played off of.
Huh. Wow.
What year did Bleach come out? 89?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I always heard that it was like only recorded for like $900 or something.
Yeah.
There's another documentary where they basically highlight the career of the producer. Who's the big guy that's famous for In Utero?
Are you talking about Steve Albini?
Albini, yeah. Where they talked about the making of In Utero and the drum sound.
Oh, yeah. Actually, recently, the Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl did Sonic Highways. Their album, every track on the album was recorded in a different city, different studio. And they visited Chicago and worked in Steve Albini's studio, kind of reminiscent when Nirvana was there doing In Utero.
Mm.
And a very interesting thing about Steve Albini is he refuses to accept royalties.
Huh.
If he would have gotten the royalties off of In Utero and I believe the Pixies album and the Helmet album,
Didn't he do Black? Didn't he? Or was
No,
that Bob
you're thinking
Rock?
Bob Rock.
Okay,
Yeah.
Bob Rock. Yeah.
But yeah, he would probably have a couple $1 million in the bank.
Maybe he wouldn't be so bitter.
He's very
good.
accessible. I mean, you guys probably heard that Asleep, Youngstown's Asleep band, they recorded with him.
Yeah, I think like $2,000, which you know,
It's
if
not
you're-
that bad considering.
No, it's really interesting.
Excuse me.
Hey, dude.
Hey, dude, where have you been?
I just went to Seattle, man.
Right now?
Dude, I've been reborn.
Were you selling coffee?
Yeah. I worked in a coffee shop, and I played with all these bands.
Really?
We made this type of music.
What's it
It's
like?
really cool. Well, it's like heavy metal music, but we just wear everyday clothes.
That's cool. It's like flannels and stuff?
Yeah. And I hung out with Claire Danes.
Wow, from,
My So-Called
yeah,
Life.
it's on MTV.
She's on MTV, too.
Yeah, every day.
Yeah, man. It's pretty tough.
Wow, you kind of got an attitude going on.
Shut up, dude. Let's crank it up, boys. Let's rock it. I got all my friends here, man.
What are you doing, man? You're making a fool. Are you gonna get all darky?
I'm alright now. All my friends are just so lame. I feel alright now. My so-called life is on all day.
This is Dan from Coal Fired Bicycle. Speaking of music, you're listening to it right now.
To sort of segue into this little thing I want to turn everybody on to, we were talking earlier before we started rolling about this new phenomenon on YouTube called Shreds. And it's where it's very unfair, but it's undeniably funny. I'm assuming the bands are mostly cool with it because no one's taking them down, but it's this new practice where people take a video of a band, a live performance usually, and they record very terrible instruments over top of the picture. And I'm going to play you just a clip of one. It's from Hall & Oates, and it's the Maneater Shreds, and that's Shreds. But to segue into this little funny bit, I'm reading my list of these albums taken from the survey, and I have Jane's Addiction, Vulgar Display of Power, Purple, and I read to you, letter for letter, what I believe to be Slames O'Neill. I don't know what that is.
I'm not familiar with that
But
at all.
apparently, among Nevermind, Bad Motorfinger, Blood Sugar, Core, Purple, Vulgar Display of Power, somebody thought that Slames O'Neill was the best album.
Is that an autocorrect of Siamese Dream?
You might be right. That is not a L, that is an I. Lucas, I'm totally fitting my gloves with more cotton candy.
Wow. That's nice.
I'm
Our
so
next
shocked
bout will
that
be
didn't make
splendid
the list.
and sweet. All right, let's check this out. This is the Whole Notes Shred for Maneater. So unfair. Okay, I'm appalled and elated all at once.
There's something about those that I really enjoy, and I don't know how many of you are familiar, probably a bunch of you, with the guitar face. You know, like the face someone makes when they're really, really playing, like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And if you replace good notes with horrible notes, it looks like you're wincing at your mistakes, which is fantastic. Also, if you haven't seen it, check it out. There is a series of folks playing guitars and basses, and the bass has been replaced with a giant slug. So they're making this face, you know, they're making their bass face or their guitar face or whatever, and they're holding this giant slug. It's just fantastic.
What's the keywords for that
It's
one?
just like guitar players with slugs or like
Guitar
bassists
players
with
slugs.
slugs. You know, if you search those words, they'll show up and they're phenomenal.
What was the one that engineer Josh Roman turned us on to? We watched it before.
Oh, it was What Fish Sounds Like to People Who Don't Like Fish.
Yes,
That's fantastic as well.
PHISH,
Yes,
Fish,
yes,
the band,
yes.
yeah. Yeah, that's hilarious as well. And it's essentially it's a shred.
Yeah, they're good.
The Creed ones are really, really good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, those guys
Kiss
shooting
one's
fish in
really
a
good,
barrel,
too.
but
Oh, man. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you guys have any closing thoughts? I know we talked about the things that we were surprised weren't on there.
it's also interesting to see the stuff that was like a huge, huge thing that you couldn't get away from not make the list. Like, think of the bands that were like absolutely massive in the 90s. Like, Rick, you mentioned Oasis, and, you know, like, haha, joke's on you guys. Nobody mentioned you. None of the 33 people that commented on that mentioned you.
Well, another thing about Oasis too is maybe the gloves are coming off on this, but they sound dated to me.
Who's that?
You mean like
Oasis.
they sound like they're from the mid 60s? Or
Yeah, and well,
or they sound like
it
they're
could be
from
the
the
production.
90s.
It could be whatever gear they're using, but it does sound very mid '90s to me.
Yeah,
They're
I know what
Beatles
you're saying.
fans. Come on.
Yeah.
and they were going for that retro thing. I get it, but
Maybe a little.
you know, but Pearl Jam does not sound dated to me, and they are essentially a classic rock band.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
they there's a lot of the Who to Pearl Jam. There's a lot of, you know, and Stone Temple Pilots, like I mentioned, they have that kind of arena rock feel to grunge. I hear their songs on the radio, and it just sounds like straight up rock and roll to me. It's stuff that has kind of always existed, never really gone out of style.
There's no Hootie and the Blowfish on that list. They were everywhere. You couldn't get away from them.
Right.
But they obviously have not stood the test of time.
There were some good contemporary albums too, pop albums. Like to this day, I'll still put on Mariah Carey's debut, "Visions of Love." I mean, that girl can sing her butt
That was
off.
everywhere she could. She could.
She does a Carole King cover. It's unplugged. It's amazing. It'll give you chills.
Wow.
Also, like some of the R&B albums that were out. I mean, the Boyz II Men album. It's a great album.
It
Great
was
singing.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Couldn't get away from it.
But you're not really seeing those albums in the used CD bins so much.
Right.
I every time I hit a used CD bin, I do see Hootie and the Blowfish.
Yeah.
I see Sugar Ray.
Geez, I forgot about those guys.
Yeah, I see things like that. But I mean, people that bought 10, 25 years ago now still have 10.
Right.
People that, and I'm sure people that were into Mariah Carey and Boyz II Men for the, at the time, authentic R&B they appreciate that.
Yeah.
And they're still making babies to it.
Yeah. I guess that is what truly tells you, like, if it's going to be like a R&B song that like really has some staying power, is how many babies were conceived to that song or to that record. I think another interesting maybe survey for all of you folks who are listening to this to chime in with is like, what are some of your favorite, or what do you think is your single favorite one-hit wonder song that encapsulates the 90s? Because there are a whole lot of things that were pretty out there, really, that like a band showed up and they cut one great song, and it is like of
Space
that era.
Hog?
Like Space Hog, yeah. The Toadies, that
Possum
Toadies,
Kingdom.
that's great. Like,
Silverchair had a nice little
yeah,
run.
yeah, they did. Presidents of the United States of America,
Right.
who I actually saw once for free, and they blew my mind. Like those
What about
guys
the
are
real
still
thing?
at it.
I think other than Fred Whitaker from Kitchen Knife, no one else named the real thing Faith No More.
What
See,
year
I didn't know
was
how
that?
technical you were
That
getting.
was late 89.
Okay,
I
okay.
avoided the 89 or
Yeah,
the year
yeah,
2000.
because Disintegration, The Cure's Disintegration would have made it on the list if it was, but that was 89. Like,
Pretty Hate Machine,
Bjork,
Bleach.
both debut and post by Bjork are great records.
they are super good.
PJ
Tori
Harvey.
Amos, oh my God. I own every Tori Amos.
Yeah,
Tori Amos is amazing. PJ Harvey. I mean,
PJ Harvey, yep.
absolutely
yeah,
phenomenal.
Yeah. Helmet didn't make the list. Helmet was like a big deal, and I judged that based on how many bands I saw in the 90s that sounded just like Helmet.
Yeah. Betty, right? Was that their big one?
Meantime, or wait, not Meantime.
That was a song.
Yeah. Which was that the name
it
of
was
that
Betty.
record? Betty was after
Yeah,
this one.
Meantime was first.
Yeah.
Then Betty.
They had one before that, but that might have been like 89 as well.
And, we talk about artists that, kind of didn't make the cut. I was actually a little bit surprised no Korn.
Korn was on there.
Simply
I think
because-
somebody...
Was it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
somebody-
you're right. It was. I don't think I registered unless it had more than one vote.
Yeah, I understand.
I mean, Korn, for better or worse, was a huge game changer.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
like their first few albums. I'm
Oh,
not
it's
afraid
classic.
to admit.
No duds on that. Is it Blind or is it self-titled?
Self-titled.
Yeah, because they introduced like that low end, that low end
Big
bass kick.
grunty detuned thing.
Yeah, and
yeah.
drop A tuning or drop.
Yeah.
I think it was drop B tuning down to A. A lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
7-string guitars.
I think somebody had that that first White Zombie record, the first big White Zombie record. That was fantastic. That's one of my favorites. Super, super good.
Mazzy Star.
Yeah, see, they were
Light some
a big
incense,
deal.
you're good to go.
Yeah, you're right. Totally right.
All right, well, we're running out of time. Got a couple more plugs, I believe. Another cool video that you can search out on YouTube is Jimmy Fallon doing his best impression of Jim Morrison, and you can find that by typing in Jimmy Fallon reading Rainbow, and he does an amazing Jim Morrison. Closing out the episode today, we're going to play some more Mind Rocket Project sessions. Sometimes we do one, sometimes we do two, time permitted. In the event we have enough time, we're going to close out with one of our more recent sessions by Younger Still. This song's called Golden Sun. And we might also follow it up with the Cardboard Cutouts doing Wilted. But I want to sort of give a little bit of a heads up about a future episode that I just thought of. I think we should do an episode on remastered records, and more specifically, remastered remix records. I don't know if you guys know, but they took 10. Pearl Jam handed it over to some engineer, and they actually not only remastered it, but they remixed channel for channel. And it sounds great. If you listen to
I'd like to hear that.
Wygo, I think it's track 3, Wygo, it sounds like a metal song. They stripped it of all the cakey reverb. which I kind of like the reverb on 10. But songs like that are more driving, that need a more of a heavy foot, killer. Jeremy sounds better. They brought out some secondary guitars that I never heard before. Some harmonies I had never heard, but check that out. It's the remix version of 10. It comes with a couple bonus songs. But yeah, stay tuned for that. And giving you folks that are into the Speaking of Music show some notice, go ahead and use your phone. Voice memo, a microphone on your laptop, whatever. 2 Dixie cups and a string, whatever, an abacus. Record your voice, your thoughts, get them to us. Email them at speakingofmusic2015@gmail.com. speakingofmusic2015@gmail.com. We'll listen to it, and we might wedge it in on a future episode. Thanks, Josh Roman, for doing a great job putting up with us and our amateurism. And Lucas, I'm hoping that you didn't feel too big of blows with those cotton candy punches.
No, I think I'll be all right.
You'll be all right?
I'll be all right, yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you guys for being a part of this. See you next time.
Right on.
The Speaking of Music show is sponsored by Nursery Podcast and Still Standing Entertainment. Please check out our friends at Supporting Your Local Music, Tonetronics, the Lime Tree Cafe in downtown Warren, Ohio, and the Record Connection.
Hey, we're younger still. This song is called Golden Sun.